that the contribution is not useful. We've got lots of submissions. So thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
All right. Now we've got New Zealand Council for Civil Liberties. I assume Andrew Ecclestone's. Oh, here you are. You've been waiting patiently. So you've got 10 minutes. You're right.
Good morning, Committee. My name is Andrew Ecclestone. I'm the Deputy Chair of the New Zealand Council for Civil Liberties. I'm also an Adjunct Senior Research Fellow in the School of Government at Victoria University of Wellington. I just wanted to note, actually, given experience of making submissions to select committees in the past, that the Chair has the freedom to extend witnesses' time for oral submissions. Perhaps that could have been done for the clerk earlier, and perhaps for academic experts, such as the professors from Otago. I've worked inside and outside government on public policy issues relating to governance and democracy for 30 years, both in the United Kingdom and here. So I have experience of working on policy and law making under longer terms of Parliament. My career has required working with MPs from across the political spectrum, so I've never been a member of a political party. I came to New Zealand more than 20 years ago to do a Masters in Public Policy, and I stayed because I felt that the MMP electoral system offered the potential for a healthier democracy, and therefore better public policy than Britain's first-past-the-post system. 20 years of living here has taught me that a better electoral system is no guarantee of a healthier democracy or better policy making, and the absence of many safeguards on executive power in Aotearoa make it more vulnerable than most to the rising tide of authoritarianism around the world. The bill's explanatory note states that a key purpose of the bill is to help improve lawmaking, and that the intent is to allow more time to develop and progress well-tested policy and legislation. And many submitters have listed what they think will result from a move to a 4-year term. More time for policy development, for drafting of laws, for scrutiny of bills, for select committee inquiries, and less use of urgency. The Council's submission notes that there are good reasons to move for a 4-year term, and personally, as a policy wonk, I would go yes. You can get better policy if people have more time available. However, we would also stress that a lot of that time should be used for greater public participation and deliberation during early stages of policy development. This is an area where our country's processes are woefully behind countries we would consider our peers. For example, the UK has had an all-of-government code of practice on public consultation for more than 30 years, and we have none. The Council stresses that these issues must be addressed before a move to a 4-year term is considered. There are also claims from some submitters that 4-year terms will lead to better long-term planning for the country, particularly around infrastructure, and there is no doubt that we need better long-term planning by government. But 4-year terms are no guarantor that governments will get better at doing this, and these arguments confuse the duration of a term in office with the quality and execution of planning. In relation to arguments like this, the committee should pay particular attention to the written submission from a very experienced former senior public servant, Deb Takawa. Her submission highlights that the issues that affect successful policy delivery are not caused by a short political cycle, but a lack of strategic clarity and poor preparedness by ministers and political parties when they take office. However, all these claimed benefits of a shift to 4-year terms must be disregarded by the committee. These submissions claiming benefits are littered with words like could, should, and would, but they provide no evidence to support the claimed connections between what the bill does and the effects that they hope will result. The bill contains no provisions about policy development, planning, drafting, strategizing, public participation, strengthening the literature, or devolving decision-making. Supporters of the bill can therefore be described as being high on hopium. They hope it will lead to good outcomes in spite of a total lack of evidence for longer terms leading to better governance they hope for. The Council opposes this bill as successive governments and parliaments have not earned the privilege of being trusted by the public for longer terms. Far more democratic safeguards and institutional strengthening need to be put in place and embedded over many years before the public can trust the government with a 4-year term. As others have said, this bill puts the cart before the horse. If MPs want better government, they need to take steps to achieve it. This means strengthening the House so that it's better able to function as both a check on the executive and to enable higher quality scrutiny and public participation. It also means devolving power away from central government to regional and local authorities. Most significantly, the Council calls on all political parties to drop their cowardice and acknowledge what is obvious to anyone who has to interact with our political system. We have far too few MPs, and we need a lot more. Having more MPs is the only realistic way to create more time for scrutiny, inquiry, dealing with constituents and considering policy issues. As we point out in our submission, New Zealand has roughly the same population as Ireland, and even if we put aside the fact that Ireland has an upper house of 60 members, we're still left with the fact that its lower house has 174 MPs. Ireland's constitution requires its electoral commission to ensure that the ratio of MPs in the lower house to the public is between 1 to 20,000 and 1 to 30,000. New Zealand was already above this ratio when MMP was introduced, and our population has grown since then by 1.5 million people, which means that our ratio of MPs to the public is now 1 to 43,500. That's almost more than 50% than the upper boundary of what Ireland's constitution permits. So if we were to meet the Irish ratio, we would now have 181 MPs. That's 59 more members and 66%. Sorry?
Heaven forbid.
Well, you say heaven forbid, but actually I say heaven requires it. If you want good legislation, better scrutiny of the executive, it's not heaven forbid, but we need it. It would provide, if we stick with 84 sitting days and 10 scrutiny days, and an underestimate of MPs working only an 8-hour day, if you had more, if we went up to 181 MPs, you would have an extra 44,000 person hours of non-government members on sitting days alone. Other ways to strengthen the House, and we made some detailed submissions on this to the last Standing Orders Review and to the Independent Electoral Review. First of all, the Office of the Clerk needs to employ more staff, so the Select Committee analysis of submissions is done by parliamentary officials, not government officials who have a conflict of interest. And that has several times resulted in officials not doing what committee members wanted. We don't have Hansard for all Select Committee proceedings such as this. We should not permit bills to receive their first reading until the Bill of Rights report on a final version of the bill has been published for at least a week in advance of the debate. We should have fresh bore analysis of bills if they're amended by Select Committee or the whole House. As others have said, we need to restrict the ability to invoke urgency. We suggest a 75% majority threshold of MPs voting to support for that, or for standing orders to be suspended. Outside the House, we've mentioned strengthening people's ability to be consulted and participate. We support lowering the voting age to 16. There should be far more consultation on exposure drafts of bills, strengthening the OIA, regulating lobbying, strengthening conflict of interest management, lowering donations to political parties. As the Council's submission points out, this bill has been developed with an extremely poor process. even more so when you consider that proposals for constitutional reform require more public participation than normal, not less. This bill, like the Parliament bill, has been developed in secret with no public involvement in the development of the policy, nor consultation on draft legislation. We're actually seeing more consultation on proposals for an overhaul of our emergency management legislation than we have for either of these bills. It's also clear from the bill's regulatory impact statement that the government has not honoured its treaty or Waitangi obligations to act in partnership with Maori in development of this bill, and it's also clear from the RIS that the government has not followed the recommendations of both the Constitutional Advisory Panel and the Independent Electoral Review. So if a government cannot be bothered to follow good practice and independent recommendations on an issue where they know they need public support to win a referendum, it highlights why government should not be trusted with four-year terms. And if poor processes on this bill were insufficient warning, events of recent weeks have massively strengthened the arguments against giving governments four-year terms without first enacting and bedding in democratic safeguards. There is nothing in this bill that would limit the ability of a future government to again push legislation through the House under urgency that retrospectively kills off the legal claims of hundreds of thousands of people. There is nothing in this bill that would require a future government to respect the findings of the Waitangi Tribunal and act on its recommendations with regard to the Regulatory Standards Bill. Our system may make Parliament supreme rather than an entrenched constitution, but that makes comity with other institutions such as the courts and the Tribunal more important rather than less. Some may argue that we see comity more often than not, but I doubt that claim will cut much ice with those whose pay equity claims have been shut down. Fundamentally, without any strengthening of our democracy and protection for our rights, New Zealand is ripe for sliding into authoritarianism. This bill, we believe, is a product of an ideology that's not interested in liberal democracy that protects minorities. It's the product of a majoritarian mindset. It's a dangerous bill because we are not safe as a country for governments to have four-year terms, and it is a dangerous bill because it seeks to entrench a claimed balancing mechanism that is no such thing. Finally, on a bill as important to this democracy, the Council believes it's vital that the public can hold individual MPs to account for their votes on the bill and not allow them to hide behind the skirts of their party's whip or musterer. If this bill does proceed beyond Select Committee, and the Council strongly recommends it does not, then public accountability requires that MPs cast personal votes on this bill in subsequent stages. Thank you.
Right, we've got 24 seconds. So, Ms. Walters.
But you could extend the time.
No, I'm not, because we're late now.
Maybe I'll try and restrict myself to, you raised the issue of we need to have our rights protected. I think I'll go back to what I asked earlier to another submitter, where should those rights be protected? Is your view that that should sit within standing orders, or there are elements of what you were speaking to, for example, the second or subsequent Bill of Rights Act that might sit separately?
Okay. I think you need a mixture of legislative safeguards and dispersal of power away from central government, as well as changes to standing orders.
Thank you. Hey, thank you for a very comprehensive submission.
Thank you.
Right, now we've got...
Well, interesting what was said there about we don't need more MPs. It's interesting the fact that in Ireland, in their constitution is one MP to every 24,000 constituents, and we're about 143. And if we actually go down to electorates, we're at 1 to every 65,000 at the moment. And at the next election, that's going to go up to near 70 because we had the reduction of a seat, electorate in the North Island because the South Island grew faster than the North Island. So I'm not sure if the less MPs, the better, because the less MPs, the less likely to actually scrutinise them. Also, might worth noting is Sir Geoffrey Palmer's been sitting in the audience the whole time. If you just watch it in the background there, I'm not sure if you can see where my mouse is on there, but he is sitting in the background watching it, and he was there when I went and did my submission as well.
Heard a lot of notes there. Coffee is being served.
Oh, yay! Yes, thanks, Stacey.
I think he said high copium at one point. Very, very powerful. So I already got his message of utilizing time effectively right at the start of that, with strategic clarity and proper transition of office plans. If there's too much would have, could have, should have. My personal view is if we're going to have twice as many politicians, let's have one Maori, one universal.
Well, the other one is if we up the number of seats in Parliament, say we upped it to 180, and we changed the population quotas, that would in turn actually involve more Māori electorates, which would then bring in more Māori MPs that way as well. So if you up the number of seats, which then requires the change of proportionality, you will still end up with, you end up having more Māori electorates. Like, the interesting thing is, we're only 20,000 additional Māori need to shift from the general to the Māori role by the time we do the next census boundary redraw in 2026. Not 2026, 2027 or 2028. It is definitely in there. We will have 8 Māori electorates, for example. Yeah. Okay. Next up is
Thanks.